The 15-Point Plan is part of the Win, Make, Give podcast network.
Welcome to another episode of the 15-Point Plan podcast. My name is Ryan Park Greigg, and as always, I am joined by my amazing co-host, Jacqueline Smith. And Jacqueline, today, I have woken up so excited. I went to bed so excited. We have a really incredible special guest. And selfishly, I think I'm going to be taking more notes than anybody else on this conversation today. But I am incredibly excited, Jacqueline, to welcome our special guest, RaQuel Hopkins. RaQuel, say hello.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Jacqueline, Ryan.
Hey.
We want to welcome RaQuel, and I'd like to read just a quick introduction for those of you that maybe haven't seen her online. You've been hiding under a rock. You haven't seen her. You haven't heard her yet. If you haven't, I guarantee you're going to be seeing and hearing a lot more from her. But let me read just a brief introduction on RaQuel, and then we're going to jump right in. RaQuel Hopkins is a licensed professional counselor associate with a Master's of Science in Clinical Health Counseling from the University of Houston-Clear Lake. She draws from a compassionate, humanistic approach, valuing the inherent worth and potential of every individual. Having experienced firsthand the complexities of adulthood, RaQuel intimately understands the challenges of balancing responsibilities while striving for personal growth. She has encountered many who grapple with overwhelming feelings, self-doubt, and the pressure to navigate life perfectly. With a deep-seated passion for assisting adults and couples, RaQuel specializes in all types of ways that you can make sure you are fulfilling your capacity at life. And with that, I want to welcome to the 15-Point Plan podcast, RaQuel Hopkins. Jacqueline, I'm going to let you take it away because I'm going to be busy taking notes. Let's get into it.
Yeah, well, why I'm so excited to have you on, RaQuel, is I had my director of sales sent me a video of yours back in the fall, and I just kind of went down this whole rabbit trail because on Instagram, you are the capacity expert, right? And we talk a lot on our real estate team about capacity. And as a coach and as a leader, one of the most frustrating things is when we have these amazing humans who are totally capable, like they've got the skill and they've got the wherewithal, but they struggle. They held back by some of the things you talk about on Instagram all the time. And so I just wanted to pick your brain for a while and see if we can find some tips and unlocks that'll help our audience. A lot of them, had set some goals like we always do, for the new year, did our business plans, last fall. And now we're finding that, wow, I might be the same person I was last year with a new goal, right? And it's not clicking for me the way I wanted it to. And so I just want to find out from you, like, what is that about and what strategies can we talk about and recommend to help overcome the obstacles that people face when they're actually facing a capacity issue, right?
So
Not a issue. Yeah.
So let's talk about what capacity is, right? Because most people think about capacity in terms of how much you can carry. Capacity does not have anything to do with how much you can carry. And I got the term capacity from adult development, and it is a developmental concept. When I say a developmental concept, it is a cognitive deficiency. So when you talk about like not having the capacity, whether at work, home, what we're really saying is I have not developed cognitively in certain ways, and that is supporting how I show up. That's what capacity is. So capacity is about how you learn to carry life, work, your responsibilities, your goals, as you were mentioning differently.
It's good. It's good. So what do you think that are the biggest challenges that people face when they're trying to expand their capacity?
Well, today, Jacqueline, I think that the emotions today, right? Because we do a lot of, because mental health is a big topic now. And a lot of people are trying to nurture and take care of their mental health, even though we don't quite understand what mental health is. But it's this protecting our emotions. A lot of people are more concerned about how they feel rather than who they can become. And if your emotions, which are fleeting, they're constantly changing, if you are not able to move past that, it makes it very difficult to focus on what your goals are because you're wanting things to feel good all the time.
Mhm.
And can't grow like that. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, that doesn't really support your mental health if we're being honest, because your mental health, and I like to keep it simple, your mental health is how you think, feel, and function every day, or how you engage with life on a regular basis. And if you are constantly protecting that, that says that how we currently think right now, that's
Mm-hmm.
who we are, that's who we'll be. That's exactly what it says. It says that how I engage with Jacqueline today, as long as I'm protecting my mental health or protecting these emotions, I don't create space for growth, for me to change.
Yeah, it sounds like what we've learned and dove into, like the growth mindset versus like the fixed
Mm-hmm.
mindset. It's a very fixed mindset, right? Like this is who I am, and I'm protecting all of that versus, I love what you said, versus focusing on who I can become.
Yep.
Okay. So what are some tools? Like, let's say we don't want to do that anymore. We don't want to protect our feelings anymore. I mean, last night I came home and I was super, snappy. I was hangry. I needed to eat some food. My emotions were not good, right? I don't want to just accept that. I want to be able to move past things, like you said, and focus on my goals and focus on growth and becoming better. What are some tools that we can give to people who want to do that?
This just popped up in my head, and if you're not open to it, I just thought about like maybe I can coach you through you coming home last night and wanting to eat and just being exhausted. How are you okay with that?
I love it. Let's
Because
do
it's
it.
not about the tools and the strategies. That's the
Okay.
thing. So many people get caught up on tools and strategies,
Okay.
and if you're always focused on the how, you never focus on the who.
Okay.
Okay, so you tell me you came home yesterday from a
It
long day
wasn't
of
a
work.
bad day. It wasn't a bad day. I had a
Okay.
fine day. I got home. I hadn't eaten, so I went to a meeting. We were maybe going to go get some food. We ended up just having the meeting at the office. So poor planning on my part. I get home. I'm hangry. And there's no food. My husband didn't make us dinner because he thought I was going out for dinner. Not his fault. And yeah, I'm just I'm in a snappy mood. There's things on the counter that shouldn't be on the counter. I start nitpicking.
Okay. Okay. Rightfully so, because you just mentioned that some poor planning had
Yep.
occurred. And it sounds like the poor planning threw you off track because things didn't go the way that you had originally intended for it to go.
Yep.
Okay. Talk to me a little bit more about poor planning and what that means to you.
Well, I I know for myself that if I don't, drink water throughout the day, eat good food at regular intervals, I get out of whack. And so I could have had maybe a protein bar, something to take the edge off. I went too long without eating. So I just didn't plan, because I had planned to go get some food, for that meeting. And we ended up not doing that. So I could have maybe had like a backup something to eat.
Okay.
So I
Okay.
get hangry.
Makes sense, right? It sounds like your health, like you take your health
Mhm.
seriously from the sense of making sure that you're giving your body what it needs so that you can
Yeah.
show up in the ways that you want.
Yep. Exactly.
Okay. So I like to do you mind if I share something with you?
Please.
Okay. So I like to tell my clients that we should focus on our relationship with self, which a lot of people are very aware of today, but we also need to focus on our relationship with responsibility, discomfort, change, and uncertainty, right? So
Mhm.
when you hear me say responsibility, change, uncertainty, and discomfort, which one of those words resonate with you as you think about how the poor planning that you've referenced kind of threw you off yesterday and had like all of these mixed emotions going on?
Change jumped out at me because it was
Okay.
like a change of plans, right?
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. And on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being RaQuel, I absolutely hate change, even though I know it's inevitable, and 1 being I love change. Like, I love change. I don't even know why I responded that way.
Hmm. That's a good question. I don't I don't think I love change. I think I've learned to adapt to it pretty well.
Mhm.
It's funny I'm saying that because I got thrown off by not having a
I
protein.
was going to ask you a follow-up question. You see there? You see how I got you?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right. You want me to keep coaching you, or we want to stop here?
Up to you. What do you got?
It's up to you. It's up to you. This is your podcast. It's whatever you want. I am just here as a guest.
Yeah, let's keep going. I'm
Okay.
good. Yeah.
Keep going. Keep going. I
Well,
want to hear
it
where this goes.
sounds like you're very self-aware. It didn't take a lot for me to present this whole concept of change to you. You said I think I'm pretty good with change, and then you started talking about the poor planning. Tell me what was coming up for you.
Well, I think what I just thought of now, and we're having this conversation, is maybe I think I'm better at change than I actually am. Is what I was just thinking now.
Okay, and when you hear yourself say that, I thought that I was probably better at change than what I actually am.
Mm-hmm.
What emotion comes up for you?
Just
Me a feeling.
a little excitement. I feel excited that I could work on that and probably smooth out some of the things that come up for me that aren't really big deals. Like that wasn't a big thing that happened last night or anything, you know. But those little emotional dips or whatever.
So let me intrude for a second, if that's
Yeah,
okay.
do it. Yeah.
How excited were you yesterday?
When I came home,
Mm-hmm.
not very excited.
Okay, so what was that emotion?
I was frustrated.
Okay, so talk to me a little bit more about how you are, or who you are when you're frustrated.
I'm critical when I'm frustrated. Um, I blame. I'm critical. I look for things to, I think, project like my internal frustration onto. Like there were the same things on the counter the last 3 nights I came home. So, but last night I was, pissed about them being there. So it's like I'm projecting I need to find a reason for my emotion, I guess, is what I am saying.
So tell me if what I'm hearing, what I think I'm hearing, resonates with you. It sounds like you pride yourself on being responsible. And by being responsible, it means handling all of the things without without not always giving yourself grace to be human. So yesterday you felt frustrated because I value being responsible. I value things being in a line. I value how I take care of myself and show up for myself. And when I'm not able to do that, I find myself frustrated and I become someone that starts to blame and or show up as a critical or very judgmental of myself and others.
Yes.
Okay. That's that awkward moment of silence, Jacqueline, where I don't say anything because this is that moment of discomfort. Remember, I used that other word, discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being I'm really uncomfortable, right? Or I feel, yeah, I'm really uncomfortable right now. And one being, RaQuel, I'm not uncomfortable at all. Where would you place yourself on that scale?
I'm not very uncomfortable right now.
And tell me why.
Well, I'm the kind of person that I do want to, you said I'm self-aware. I've worked on becoming self-aware. And so if I didn't want to be self-aware, I'd probably be more uncomfortable right now.
So
But
you value growth.
I value growth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'll stop here,
Okay.
right? And I'll throw the question back at you because we didn't know how this podcast would go today, right, Ryan? But I'm glad thank you for giving me the opportunity to like kind of coach you on the spot. You
Thank you.
asked me for tools and strategies.
Mm-hmm.
I gave you like my definition of what capacity is. If you were to take our conversation that we just had within the last 7 minutes or so, what do you believe the tools and strategies are?
Jacqueline, but before you do that, RaQuel, that was incredible coaching right there. And I know a lot of our listeners are business leaders and or coaches. And you asked her so many powerful questions. And I saw Jacqueline's gears going and I saw her thinking. And then at the end, I saw herself realize we as coaches often want to say, hey, you should do this and you should do that. And here's where you should do this. And you did none of that. And you didn't need to because you asked her so many powerful questions. And then you made sure you heard her by saying things like, tell me if this is what I'm hearing. Did I hear you correctly? And Jacqueline said everything that you could have told her, but you didn't need her to simply because you asked her questions. And it kind of reminded me of one of your banger quotes, as I called it, was that struggling isn't the problem. The avoidance of struggling is. And you're not actually growing. You're just creating distance from anything that requires you to grow.
Yep.
And then when you ask Jacqueline, how uncomfortable are you? She's like, meh, not really. And that is because Jacqueline is comfortable. Jacqueline can take the feedback. Jacqueline wants to grow. She's not running from that like so many of us can do. So I just had to interject that there. That was incredibly powerful coaching. And if you're in the real estate or coaching world of any space, hit rewind like 7 times and listen back to how RaQuel just did that. That was powerful.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you. Thank you, Jacqueline, for the opportunity to do that on the spot. Like that was a level of vulnerability that a lot of people can't tap into. So you just displayed all of the tools and strategies in the sense of what capacity looks like. Now, the journey for each individual will look completely different in the sense of maybe that person is not frustrated, but they're angry, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's figuring out how to support them with that sense of anger.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I could ask you this. Did you sit in those feelings of frustration or did you just react?
I definitely reacted.
Yeah, that's the difference because reacting does not create the space for you to sit with the discomfort that I'm frustrated for all of the things that we just went through during the time that we were talking.
So would you say the quote that Ryan just read about it's not struggle that's the issue, it's the avoidance of struggle, then could you interchange that with feelings? Like it's not the feelings that are the problem, it's the avoidance of the feelings. And is that part of what diminishes because you can't deal with something that you're avoiding. You can't allow something to flow through that you're avoiding either. So
The
is that
struggle came before you started feeling, though. The struggle came the minute that you realized that you didn't have a protein bar. Like
right?
that was the struggle then.
Yeah.
And when we talk about checking in with ourselves, right? Like if you know what your values are, right? Like it's important for me to feed myself. It's important for me to eat because that's what gives me the ability to operate at my highest level. That's what optimization looks like for me.
Right.
You could have said, like, right now, I'm not frustrated, but I know that I'm going to become frustrated. But
Mm-hmm.
right now, I'm feeling discombobulated right now because I know that I'm not doing something. Like, you can really check in with yourself, like, in those moments because you're leaning into the invitation that life is asking you to grow. And it's simple. It really is. Like it's simple. Like
Yeah.
in that moment, because you're self-aware, you know what your values are, you have an idea of what's important to you and what's not. You could have checked in with yourself, which meant then now I'm taking responsibility for not eating. I am choosing to not eat because whatever reason. And because I am choosing not to eat, it creates space for you to navigate your emotions in a much healthier way. So we've talked about discomfort, we've talked about change so far. We didn't touch on uncertainty per se, but now I was starting to touch on responsibility, right? Because responsibility is when, for example, your values, you hold yourself accountable to whatever your values are. And when you're not doing that, you are consciously, you're not, I'm not going to say consciously, but you are then not making a choice. And when we're not making a choice, I think you guys know like this, I'm going to the victimhood, and we can fall victim to not recognizing that we are not taking responsibility for our actions and or our values. And then that's when we start to struggle with those other things. So the emotions, they're really just a small piece. It's just, when do you actually catch them? Because you had emotions before you had gotten to being frustrated. It was, I'm like discombobulated. I'm all over the place.
Can I ask a question on that, RaQuel? Because we create these labels on ourselves, and a lot of them are good and a lot of them are very simple. And it sounds like a label, and I'm the same that Jacqueline had, was, well, I'm hungry, therefore I can be a little grumpy. But on a bigger level, if we have these labels like, well, I have ADHD, or I have these other things, and we have these labels in our life. And another one of your quotes that I love, you had a bad day, 2, 3 bad days. That's not mental illness, that's life. Mm-hmm. How can we just constantly remind ourselves of these labels that we've created, as small as, well, I'm hungry, therefore I can be grumpy, but maybe on the bigger picture labels, ADHD, or I'm just this. How can we break out of that in our brains, the labels?
I'll start with the I'm hungry first, right? I'm hungry. I have a choice. I live with ADHD. I live with ADD. However, I have a choice in terms of how I navigate that. It's the choice piece that a lot of us end up missing because we're so used to operating at default. So I'm hungry. I have a choice. I live with ADHD, but I have a choice. So it's reminding you of, one, it's empowering, and it reminds you of the power that you have to choose, and it helps you recognize when you're not choosing. Because in this situation, Jacqueline could have still said that, all right, I'm hungry, but I'm going to bypass the protein bar because I really need to get to this next event. That's ownership. Or if we're talking about these labels, Ryan, okay, I live with ADHD, but I have a choice, so to speak. What we would then say is, I live with ADHD. I am flustered, or I really feel like my ADHD is getting the best of me. So I am choosing not to engage with life today. So it still is rooted in that choice. We're not defined by our circumstances, and I think that little the coaching that we just did showed that too. Jacqueline had started. My sister's name is Jackie. Jacqueline has started internalizing that experience, or that label of I'm hungry, and that's the same thing for someone that lives with mental illness. Mental illness does not mean that you are not capable. Maybe you don't have the ability to do certain things, or some things are much harder for you than they may be for others. And that within itself can be crippling to a person's mental, your psyche, but it still doesn't change that you have the ability to challenge and stretch yourself in these same ways. And that capacity for you may not look like Jacqueline's, but that capacity, developing your capacity, will be right for you.
Yeah, you said in another podcast that I heard you talking about, RaQuel, you win at life in your mind first. When you're at peace, the rest around you is just noise. if we can go into our mind and say, hey, you know what? I didn't have my protein bar. I'm good.
There you go, Ryan.
Like we win in our mind first. So I love how you tied all that together. Jacqueline, keep going with your questions though, because I'm just taking more notes here.
Well, so if it's not always about the strategy, you said, right, the tools or the strategies, everyone wants to go to the tools and strategies, which is right where I wanted to go.
Mm-hmm.
So where do we go? You said it was about, not always about what, it's about the who. So let's unpack that a little bit.
It's gonna sound a little cliche, but you go inside. You do, like, you go, it's your mind and your heart, right? And most people are not connected to that. If you're not connected to your mind and heart, it makes it very difficult to live a sustainable life that shows that you have capacity. Now, I'm not saying that because from a developmental standpoint, right, we all chase success and all of those things, right? I think that today we have like a little mixed generations who are not necessarily chasing success, which you need to go and do something, because that too will impact your mental health at some point. But getting in tune with self is really important. And I think that that's what makes me a really good coach and or therapist, because you have these theoretical models and I can grasp them and understand them, but I also know that correlation does not mean causation all the time, right? So for me, it's just information, it's another tool. The practical knowledge, which makes us all human, is where I tend to go to, but it's so gray, it's abstract. And most people are not okay with discomfort, uncertainty, and change and all of those things. So it's hard to support people from that level. And I think that is, I'm like scratching my head because I'm like, want to give myself credit, but I think that that's probably like a gift of mine. Even if you take away the education, because my brain just pulls it all together in a way to where I can then connect the practical with the theoretical stuff as well.
Right. So I think I definitely agree with you that you have a gift, because the way that you speak on all of your videos and the content that I've seen, I mean, you're saying so many things, like Ryan said before you hopped on, like that she's saying all the things that we think, but we maybe don't know how to articulate it. So it feels like truth when we hear it, right? Because it's resonating with
It resonates
of us, right? Yeah.
Where does that come from in you, RaQuel? Have you always been that way in life from a young child? How did you grow that in your brain, in yourself?
So I do. So I've always been told that I was the kid before my time, and you just need a little experience, right? I've always been told as a kid you need to stay in a child's place, because I always thought that I knew better than adults did. I thought that adults, like people that were raised, they don't know what they're doing. And I always tell people, so my story, that because what most people don't know, I always tell, can I curse? If I curse, will like, or not curse? Should I
Drop
not
it.
curse? All right. I always tell people that I went from shit to sugar. And then when I got the sugar, I was like, oh gosh, let me go back to the shit, because I can do well in some shit, right? And the shit piece was the typical, the black girl grew up in the projects, loses her mom to an overdose. Now she moves with her dad, who has his own family. Like, don't have much. My dad is a, mechanic, but my dad is a realist too. My dad is not the type of person, like, you can go to your dad and be like, Dad, I smoked weed yesterday. And he'll be like, okay, how'd you like it? And you're like, oh, shoot. Like, I don't know if this is like parenting or not, but my dad has always created that space for you to be who you are. And if I use my mom, because I did get 11 years with my mom was a 17-year-old. She had me when she was 17 years old, no high school diploma. By the time that my mom, I think she was 30 or 31 when she died, but she was really big on education. So that 11 years, that imprint of education was there for me. And I don't know if you saw my video today, I talk about survival mode. Like, when you are forced to have to learn to survive, you don't necessarily appreciate it because your sense of resiliency is built through necessity. You don't get to like learn the life lessons that are going to just come just from being human. And then if you fast forward to, I was actually going to go into the military, and I had an uncle who had ended up doing very well for himself. And he was like, "We're changing the game. You're going to college." And I ended up going to college. And when I graduated from college, my uncle had his company. He said, "You're going to come in, you can come and work for me." And it was hell. Like when I say hell, hell in the sense of I thought that because now I'm privileged. I don't know anything about privilege. I thought that privilege meant privileged people don't have adversity. I'm just being honest. I thought that that did not exist. I struggled tremendously because the nepotism was one thing, but you had to learn to navigate a very complex terrain. And when in living in shit, like everybody knew the rules, right? Like you don't let people disrespect you. There wasn't a lot of complexity. It was black and white. And then I go and I work for my uncle, and you're having to learn so many different things. Well, first, I didn't have a strong sense of self, right? Because this is a change. This is my first time really going out into corporate. My uncle is a businessman. He doesn't have time to sit there and coddle me all the time. It's like sink or swim. But I know that he loves me, right? So you're navigating that most of the time feeling unloved. And then you have people, because I didn't know what microaggressions or any of those things was. It was very hard for me to play victim because I had privilege, right? So I've had people curse me out for my uncle, and then you're like, can we fire him? He's like, no, well, this is my top performing executive, and you're gonna have to figure out how to navigate that. So, or when you would find situations, because everybody talks about the boss, right? Like
Yeah.
this is I didn't know my capacity was expanding in this sense, but all right, if I want to be a really good HR professional, I'm going to have to learn to listen to people talk about my uncle without taking it personal. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to have to learn to go into these meetings when my uncle is talking to me as his, well, at one point, just, his HR person versus his VP of HR, and then still be able to go home and you say that you want to go and celebrate grandma's birthday. I'm not going today. Like, I had to navigate all of that. Like, and then we were in the internet space, so we worked with the military. It was predominantly male. I mean, I can recall my uncle and I arguing over he wanted to do the European style bathrooms, and I'm like, woman, we want to have a separate bathroom. We're not in Europe. We're in the U.S. And like you start to realize that life does not discriminate with its lessons. And that was a hard pill to swallow for me, especially as a black woman, because it's like, well, what are you going to use to play victim? Because you're seeing so many different things, like diversity, right? We hire who the hell we wanted to hire, right? You hire based off of comfort, what feels good, and sometimes just your confirmation biases. So I didn't know how I was being shaped, right? I knew how I was being shaped in the shit. I didn't know how I was being shaped in the sugar. So
Mhm.
I struggled tremendously. Like, and I think that I didn't have the language then, but for sure, anxiety, depression, you name it, I had it because I can remember times where I'm like migraines and I'm going to get CAT scans because of all of the things that we talked about. I didn't have the capacity. It was a change. So I think that that's what people are getting. Like, I like to say, like, I'm from the streets because I am. But I also know what it's like to have as well. So you get a very balanced and nuanced perspective from me, coupled from my life experience and being able to bridge the education as well. And I ended up quitting too. I ended up quitting because I wouldn't be here talking to you. So that was a struggle within itself. Like, how do you stay true to who you are, especially because for us, it's like, we get an opportunity to create generational wealth. Like everybody should want to be a part of it. And having to walk in every day and feel like you're living someone else's story or their truth was really hard for me too, because if you don't come from anything and somebody makes it, like you do that, you should do that thing. So I really struggled. That was probably the hardest time of my life. Like I felt like it trumped losing my mom to an overdose, and I watched her do it. I watched her lose
Wow.
her life. Like becoming the therapy term, they say parentification. Like I felt like I
Hmm.
became a mom early because I had a younger sister, so I constantly was protecting her. When I look back on it, the grand scheme of things, all of those things were really easy for me. Like it came natural, leaning into responsibility, and then this new world just, oh my gosh, it shook me to my core because I felt very isolated. I felt misunderstood. You would try to come home and talk to your friends about it, but they're like, girl, shut up. Like, you work for your uncle. You ain't got no real problems.
Huh.
Mhm.
So it was just, that was just what it was. So I think that when people listen to me, you're getting all of that. You're getting the girl from the streets, and then you're getting the girl that know what it's like to have too. So I
Yeah.
don't know.
Well,
You're getting
what
the
we're getting,
shit.
yeah, exactly. We're just getting somebody that's so real, and I'm glad that you quit because of that we get you today, and the world gets you today. And it sounds like you really bet on yourself in that moment by going and saying, you know what, this is what I have found I'm destined to do. You worked your way through all that stuff, like you said, you were forced to survive. You couldn't play the victim; you had to become the victor, and you worked your way through that story where a lot of people might have had PTSD from that. I came up with
Mm-hmm.
an acronym for story, RaQuel: suffer, trauma, or release yourself.
Trauma or release yourself. Okay, I like that.
And you completely released yourself from that trauma. So my final thought, because I know you got to get going, you could have had the
Like I like.
PTSD. You could have had the PTSD from that and hung on to that. But you mentioned something that I heard you say, and then I'll leave it at this: post-traumatic growth disorder.
Mm-hmm.
Hit us with that, and then I know you got to run, but I got to ask you about this post-traumatic growth disorder.
So I didn't know about that until I went to that mental health program. I don't remember how I came across it, or maybe it was either the mental health program or when I was still trying to make myself stay to work for for my uncle's company. I think I was at the School of Wharton for an HR certification. And there was this lady there, and I was just so in awe of how she moved and handled the room. And she used to talk about like overcoming a lot. And she talked about post traumatic growth, and I may have started looking at it on my own. And I realized that I had not had any therapy. I didn't have any therapy from like the childhood stuff, and I had no therapy like dealing with the family stuff because it was like secrets. Like you don't want to go and tell people like your business because I wasn't mature as I am now to understand like what was happening. So I realized I'm like, wow, like I'm becoming a different person. And that's what post traumatic growth is. It's this transformation when you can take all of your experiences and it turns into something beautiful to where you truly have an appreciation for how life has tested you, how life has tried to tear you down, and you did not, whether you didn't fall victim to it all. Yeah, I had a bunch of bad days, right? But I didn't fall victim to it. And that's what post traumatic growth disorder, it acknowledges that trauma is perceived. And I think that we often miss that piece. Like there are some things that without a doubt we'll be like, oh, that's traumatic. But there's also trauma when we say, or even that too, if it's complex trauma, people's perceptions can change, right? That's why we talk about neuroplasticity and how your brain can be rewired and all those things, which is why it's important to challenge your thinking in the way that I do on social media because that was happening for me and I didn't know that it was happening, but I was realizing that the forgiveness for my mom had like dissipated, and I didn't know how it had happened. But I became an adult. I started to understand how hard life was, and I became a mom. And I was like, "Well, I'm not perfect either. Like I have the ability to cause pain, and it's not because I yelled at my child versus my mom dying from an overdose. Pain is pain.
Mhm.
It is pain, and a lot of times we like to rank it, right? Well, you did this and this was really bad. No, pain is pain. Like, we don't have to make a separation or create this distinction between a lot of things in life. And I can now see how things are interconnected. So the post traumatic growth is like this. This is the transformation. This is, the quell that you get, or RaQuel. My nickname is Quell.
Ah,
I love it.
well, I know both of us. Jacqueline, go ahead.
Well, I just want to thank you for taking the time to share all of this with us, and for the coaching session that you gave me, and the conversation. I think I'm kind of going internal with it and thinking a lot about this growth, trauma, growth, and all the things, transformation. And I'm just thankful for the time that we had with you.
Yeah. Let me share something. I was really nervous about this podcast because I was like, I started making a label, right? I was like, real estate. First of all, I got my real estate license and I hated real estate. I wanted my money. I was like, I'm not going to drive you to 50 houses and you tell me that you didn't like that toilet. Like, I can't do this. It wasn't for me. Like, I actually quit on a client. Like, seeing a house, they had an attitude. I was like, I pulled off and left them right at the showing. So don't judge me. That, we're always growing. But I found out that was not for me. And eventually it got me here. But I was anxious about getting on this podcast because I'm like, real estate. And then I saw the 15 point. Is that what it's? 15 point. Yeah, I was like, I don't know how it all ties together. And it ended up being a beautiful conversation. So I am so glad that you stepped out on uncertainty, because I probably wouldn't have engaged in like real estate. But yeah.
Absolutely. We are so thankful that you joined us today, RaQuel. Tell our listeners where they can find you, and then we'll let you get going.
Yeah, so I am on Instagram primarily, RaQuel, the capacity expert, and there's an underscore under each one of those, RaQuel underscore the. But if you just put in RaQuel, the capacity expert, you can find me. I also have an ebook on my Instagram page as well, where I kind of share a little bit of my story while also offering tools and support to navigate responsibility, change, discomfort, and uncertainty. So you can grab it for $27.
Love it.
Beautiful. Well, RaQuel, thank you so much for joining us. As she mentioned, you can also follow Jacqueline Ray Smith on Instagram and myself, Ryan Park Greigg. You can check all of our previous episodes at winmakegive.com. And RaQuel, thank you again for joining us. Until next time, thank you for listening. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.